Good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson Tonight. If you've been paying attention to the news lately, you're probably confused about a bunch of things, but you know one fact for sure. James Comey is a better person than you are. He's a virtuous man. Honest, decent, chivalrous. Integrity might be his middle name, though he would never admit it because he's also incredibly humble. Comey doesn't make the kind of grubby moral compromises that characterize your sad, mediocre life. Like Lincoln or the Buddha, Comey's ideals are high, and he lives them. He has said that repeatedly in cable news interviews, so obviously it is true. How good a person is Jim Comey? Well, consider what he decided to do when he left the FBI. He's not giving lectures on law enforcement matters, on how to unravel international money laundering rings or stop drug trafficking. That would be too obvious, too temporal. Instead, Jim Comey is teaching the rest of us about leadership, how to be better people. His is a moral mission.
I could be useful by offering people a vision of what ethical leadership looks like.
It's hilarious, actually. But it's not that surprising. Keep in mind that hypocrisy is the signature fact of this moment, 2018. Whatever public figures are scolding you for doing, they are almost certainly doing themselves, and avidly, if in secret. The ones who lecture you about feminism turn out to be sexual predators. Every anti-gun activist seems to have an armed bodyguard. In a world like that, it is not surprising that James Mr. Integrity Comey left the FBI in an ethical cloud. The DOJ's long-awaited Inspector General's report apparently accuses Comey of ignoring the directives of his superiors, of being insubordinate in order to pursue his own agenda. That is not a small charge in a law enforcement agency, but again, it's not surprising in this case. Danny Carlson is a former Deputy Assistant Director of the FBI, and he joins us tonight. Mr. Carlson, thank you for coming on.
No, thank you. I enjoyed your monologue. That was awesome.
Well, it was heartfelt. And none of this is surprising because it's always the people accusing you of something who are doing that very thing. But I still am a little shocked by what we know, what we think we know. I mean, there are leaks about this IG report, and we'll see. It's coming out 500 pages or so soon. But from what we think we know, Comey is being accused of insubordination, which is not a small thing in the FBI. Is that correct?
Oh, no, it's ground for dismissal. Absolutely. That's you have to follow orders, and they have to be lawful orders. But you're obliged to follow them. If you don't, then they get rid of you, and rightly so. So
assess what we think the IG report says about how he handled the Hillary Clinton email investigations in light of your own experience working on big investigations like Iran-Contra, which you were involved in. What do you think of the job he did?
Well, I think we'd have to do a term paper on that, Tucker. You could do a master's thesis on all the things that went wrong in that case. From the very first day he did his press conference where he exonerated Hillary Clinton and then reopened the case on the Anthony Weiner matter, we all knew that was wrong. That's something you don't do. You don't have to have the IG tell you that. If you ever commanded a major investigation or a field division, you know you do nothing that will affect the outcome of a political of an election. And he ignored that. I was flabbergasted when I saw him do it. And then we could go on and on and on about how he didn't let the FBI do his job. He acquiesced to not having a grand jury, which I was only there 31 years, and I never saw that, but maybe I missed something. And then he called it a matter, acquiesced to Loretta Lynch's demand that he called it a matter. You know, being a leader doesn't mean you sail in calm waters. Being a leader means you fight the headwinds, you fight the storms, and you lead your agency appropriately. He just didn't do that. He never put on his FBI hat. He always wore his Department of Justice hat and made decisions he had no business making. So I have a big problem with his
So I want to go back to something you just said. You said you were there for 31 years. You saw a lot of investigations take place, and you'd never seen a situation like this where a grand jury wasn't called. Is that what you said?
Absolutely, that's what I said. From the most minor investigation to the most major investigation, you cannot do your job as an agent or a commander or a prosecutor without a grand jury. And the fact that this is a major investigation of national importance, and he acquiesced to not being allowed to have a grand jury, he should have gone to Congress. He should have demanded an independent counsel. He should have done a lot of things. You have to buck the headwaters sometime, and he didn't do that. And I think it frankly showed a lack of courage.
Why do you think they didn't want a grand jury?
They didn't want to find out what happened. But it's very simple. If you bring people in for the grand jury, you can get grand jury subpoenas, you can compel testimony, you can grant immunity, you can subpoena documents and information, and without that tool, you're just begging for cooperation. The FBI never looked at the Democratic Party, the server that the Democrats had to manage that was supposedly hacked. They never got that. They said no. Well, if you don't have a grand jury, you're not going to get it. So, this isn't Boy Scouts going on and trying to sell you some candy or something. Then when the FBI comes with a grand jury subpoena, you comply. And if you don't have a grand jury subpoena, you're not going to find out what happened, and clearly they did not.
What this story is needed from day one is perspective on how the FBI in functional times operates, and you just provided that, and I really appreciate it. Mr. Carlson, thank you for that.
Thank you. I enjoyed it.
Congressman Eric Swalwell represents the state of California. He is on the House Intelligence Committee. He's been at the center of a lot of the Russia investigation from day one. He joins us tonight. Congressman, thanks for coming on.
Of course. Hey, Tucker, before we start,
yeah,
you were born in San Francisco?
Yes, I was.
I represent that area?
Yes.
Can we at least agree we're both rooting for the Golden State Warriors tonight in the finals?
No.
Oh, Tucker, it's going to be a long night. It's going to be a long night.
I've given up California, sadly. I wish I hadn't. But so let me ask you this. I'm sure you're as offended on some level as a Hillary voter as I am by what we're learning from this IG report, apparently. We don't have the report. But that Comey went against orders by going out in the final days of the campaign and saying that they're reopening this investigation into Hillary Clinton. That probably hurt her. I'm not for Hillary, but I think it did. I think it's clear. Why would you want to lionize someone who would do that? Why is he a hero on the left just because he hates Trump? Is that what it is?
First, it's really shocking to hear all of this outrage now from Republicans that, we were doing this to Hillary Clinton. How dare they? I didn't hear any of this during the campaign.
You heard it from me. I said it. I did say that.
Donald Trump was cheerleading James Comey opening up this case.
Maybe, but I thought it was totally bizarre when he did it.
Look, I'm going to wait for the IG report. I'll say this. Jim Comey is an imperfect man. Yeah. All of us are, but imperfect people are still capable of telling the truth and being consistent. On the issue of Russia, he has gone to Congress a number of times, raised his right hand, put himself under oath, and has been consistent. That's something that the president is not willing to do with Bob Mueller. So right now we have uncontroverted evidence from James Comey. That's not lionizing him. That's saying that's the only evidence right now that exists.
Yeah, I wouldn't say he was consistent, but I'm just interested if you could explain to me, this has been a debate we've had on the show 20 times, but it's still unsettled in my mind. Why is it okay for an administration to hire an informant to spy on a rival political campaign without telling them? Why is that okay? Are you comfortable with that?
Well, that's not what happened. And actually,
how is that not what happened?
We learned today that every person who's been briefed on this, except Chairman Nunes, now says that the president's account of this, that a spy was put in his campaign, is just not true.
No, I know that there's a lot of lying about it, but I'm not those people.
From the Republicans.
I'm not the president. Here's what I read in the New York Times, and what I think has never been contested, that the Obama administration paid an informant to spy on the Trump campaign and then pass that information back to the Obama administration and never told the Trump campaign. Is that incorrect? What am I missing?
Yeah, well, Tucker, I'm not going to go into classified information. I'll tell you that.
No, that's not classified. That's known. That's in the public, and the Washington Post and the Wall Street Journal, and nobody has said that's untrue. Are you saying that's untrue?
I'm saying that informants are commonly used in a lot of cases to help us catch bad guys. If it was used here, but from the evidence I have seen, that would have been appropriate.
No, but you just said.
But from the evidence I will say this, from the evidence I have seen, from the FISA applications I've reviewed, and the witnesses we've interviewed, we would want to know everything about how close the Trumps were getting to the Russians.
Okay, but
and yes, through informants, yes.
Okay, so
I'm okay with
that's somehow incorrect? So I guess what really bothers me is the Orwellian lying going on around this. I just stated what I think are facts. You conceded they're facts. And yet that's not spying. How is that not spying?
No, spying is what you do against an enemy, right?
Well, first of all,
that's what spying is.
No. And spying is what you do. No, you can spy on people you love. You can spy on your own children. It doesn't need to be an enemy. That you're expanding the definition into some made-up land. Well, why is that not spying? If I am watching you without your knowledge, gathering information on you without your knowledge, don't tell you about it, I'm spying on you.
But if a candidate for the highest office in the land is drawing himself, his family, his businesses to a foreign adversary, wouldn't we want our government to do everything we can to know what they're doing and then hopefully try and stop that adversary?
But just one thing at a time. Well, you can see that's spying.
No.
It's not spying.
And
you're secretly gathering
everyone but
information
Devin
on
Nunes
someone,
has admitted
but it's
that.
not spying.
Mitch McConnell, Paul Ryan, Trey Gowdy, they all said it's not spying.
I think that what McConnell and Gowdy and Ryan have said is ludicrous, and I've invited all of them on this show to answer the same questions I'm posing to you, which is, when you're spying on someone, how is it not spying? And of course, they won't come on because they're too afraid.
Do you think the government should use
informants? They're always welcome to come on.
But do you think the government should use
I think an administration should have a really good reason before putting a spy in a rival presidential campaign, and I think all of us should be completely freaked out about it, and we should want to know why this happened, but we don't.
I absolutely agree with you. Tucker, I absolutely agree with you. You should have a damn good reason if you're going to use an informant, use wiretaps, use a FISA application on a presidential campaign.
But hold on,
the evidence I've seen, though, gave plenty of damn good reasons.
But tell me why
they
it's
were
not
too close to the
Russians.
Russians.
Just make me feel better, and tell me why spying on the Trump campaign was not spying. Just speak slowly so I can understand.
It was not spying what they were doing.
So what was it?
They were conducting a criminal investigation. And in criminal investigations, when you have probable cause signed off by a judge, you can conduct what they did.
But it's not spying because, I mean, look, I'm not asking whether it was justified or not. I just want to start with the definition. Everyone's telling me, including Paul Ryan and Trey Gowdy, those people I'm supposed to respect, I guess, it wasn't spying. Okay, tell me how it wasn't spying. Why is it not spying? They're lying to me. And I find it very frustrating. Let's just be honest about what it was, and then we can move to whether it was okay.
What it was a presidential campaign willing and eager to work with the Russians, and they were doing everything they could to learn more. I want our government to do that, whether it's the Russians, the Chinese, the Iranians,
no,
the
that's
North Koreans.
not.
And whether it's Democrats or Republicans.
Hold on. You're allowed to work with anyone you want. You're allowed to say, I want closer ties with this or that country.
Really?
Yes, you are.
You want that?
Yes, in a free country, you're allowed to have different foreign policy
I hope that changes tomorrow, and here's what I'm talking about.
You think you're not allowed to have different foreign policy views from yours?
No, I'm introducing Tucker, I'm telling you this first. I'm introducing legislation tomorrow. It's called a Duty to Report Act. It says if you're a federal campaign, family member of a campaign, and you're approached by an agent of a foreign power who's given you unsolicited information in a campaign, you have to tell somebody. Ivanka, Donald Trump Jr., the whole
agent
business
of a foreign power.
Yeah.
Let me just,
Go ahead.
as I've said this before, I know you're new to D.C. Yeah. I would say a third of the city are agents of foreign powers.
Yeah,
not of Russia.
We don't want them helping us.
No, I don't. You know what? I think all of them should leave. But I'm just telling you
we want diplomatic
what you
relations.
already know, which is this city is filled with people acting on behalf of foreign governments.
And when they start to meddle in elections,
cool
that's wrong.
No, they go
and you should
up,
have to tell somebody.
Yeah, they go up to your building every single day and try and win over your colleagues, and nobody says anything about it.
That should be illegal. But if you're trying to give dirt on a campaign, and we just learned today, Ivanka was trying to make connections with Moscow during the campaign.
Look, I've said
like the bingo card has been filled now.
Ivanka is definitely a foreign agent. Consider her name. It doesn't sound American, does it? We should deport her. Okay. But I just want you to be honest. I want Speaker Ryan to be honest. I want everyone just to be honest that this was spying, and I guess that's cool with you. But it was spying, and to lie to us and say it was something else entirely is very frustrating.
If Speaker Ryan, Mitch McConnell, myself, Trey Gowdy, Adam Schiff, if we all agree and you and Devin Nunes don't you think there's something odd there?
I just want you to explain how it wasn't spying, but you can't. None of you can because it's propaganda, actually.
It's informative investigation.
Okay, it sounds like really quick.
We want our government to do it. Yes.
We're hearing Democrats and some Republicans, honestly, say that it's immoral to separate families because of immigration law. That when you detain someone who's broken our immigration law and you separate him from his family, it's immoral. When you detain an American citizen for breaking the law, you separate him from his family. But no one complains. Why is that?
Yeah, well,
why should illegal aliens get special standards?
Yeah, look, if an American committed a violent crime,
any crime. If I get caught shoplifting, I get arrested, and I'm separated from my kids, and that's okay with you.
You're typically not held in custody for months.
I don't know. I might be.
No, I was a prosecutor. You wouldn't be. I met with
yes. People are detained all the time for nonviolent crimes.
I met with a woman yesterday, Miss Guzman from Hayward, California. She told me the story of being separated from her son for months and her 15-year-old daughter as well. It's heartbreaking. All she was trying to do was seek asylum. She wasn't even.
What about Americans who break the law? I don't think you seem upset at all about them being separated from their kids. Why is that?
No, I don't want anyone who is nonviolent, non-sexual criminal to be separated from their families.
Because people go to jail for many years for nonviolent crimes all the time.
We should reduce that
Bernie Madoff did. He was separated from his family. Did you cry about that? No, I'm serious. It was a nonviolent crime.
No, separating a mother from their child. That is breaking the strongest bond that exists on this earth.
Martha Stewart was separated from her daughter. She's a mother. She went to prison.
A mother from a non-adult child. Tucker.
A non-adult child. So anybody who commits a crime with
non-violence,
any woman who commits a crime with non-adult kids should not be.
There should be a really good reason. And immigration,
so the law
it's not a good reason.
should be different based on gender and parenthood.
Well, mothers and children.
My wife will be happy to hear that.
Yeah, so would I.
Congressman, it's great to see you. The world is changing so fast. I just need someone to explain.
And go Dubs tonight.
Go Dubs. Thank you. Lou Dobbs will be here to react to the immigration story we just discussed, also respond to a new poll that shows basically everyone in America is more upset about immigration than they are happy about it. Why don't Republicans run on it then? Good question. That's next. Across the country last night, this could be a very tough fall for Republicans. The incumbent party typically gets hurt in the first midterm, almost always, and this year could be worse than usual for a bunch of different reasons. But one of those reasons may be that Republicans are running on entirely the wrong issues. Your average Republican office holder seems to believe that most Americans love mass immigration. They say that all the time. Turns out it's not true. Big Republican donors love mass immigration, so do professional Democrats. It increases the size of their party. But normal people are very skeptical of it, actually. Consider a new CBS YouGov poll. It's amazing. Turns out far more Americans think immigration is making their communities worse, not better. And it's not just those dreaded white people Democrats are always attacking who think that. 45% of African Americans say immigration is hurting them. Only 17% say it's helping. How about Hispanics? Where are they on this? Republican consultants tell you, and they tell their candidates, never to say a negative word about immigration for fear of alienating Hispanic voters, who are supposedly very sensitive on the subject. Turns out that's idiotic and patronizing. Actually, 44% of Hispanic voters say immigration is hurting their communities. Just 28% say it's improving things. The numbers could not be clearer. Immigration is a powerful issue for Americans of all kinds. And it's an issue that Republicans can win on if only they were brave enough to listen to voters. But they're not. After a year and a half of total control of Congress, no wall is being built, sanctuary cities remain well funded, E-Verify is not enacted, chain migration is alive and well. Nothing is happening. And now the media are telling you it's immoral somehow to separate illegal immigrant parents from their children. Lots of Republicans agree with this, but wait. Americans who get arrested are separated from their children. American citizens should be treated more harshly than illegal aliens? How is that? Here's the Attorney General on the subject. Watch this.
We believe every person that enters the country illegally like that should be prosecuted, and you can't be given immunity to people who bring children with them recklessly and improperly and illegally. We don't want to do this at all. If people don't want to be separated from their children, they should not bring them with them.
So you hear Jeff Sessions criticized a lot for a bunch of different things, but when you come right down to it on this issue, he's basically the only person in Washington still arguing that borders and laws matter. Maybe the rest of his party will wake up and realize they do. Lou Dobbs hosts Lou Dobbs Tonight on Fox Business, and he joins us tonight. Lou, it's great to see you. You've thought about this issue more deeply than almost anybody I know. Does it surprise you that no one has paused to ask, well, wait a second, if it's wrong for illegal aliens to be separated from their kids when they commit a crime, why is it not wrong for American citizens to be separated from their kids when they commit a crime?
Because there are protected groups in the United States, but when it comes to illegal immigrants, they are a preferred group. It is so because the establishment, the Business Roundtable, the Chamber of Commerce, U.S. multinationals want cheaper labor. They want open borders. They want to, quote unquote, harmonize those borders. You don't hear much about the North American Union anymore, but under George Bush and through most of the Obama administration, the North American Union, that is, bringing Canada and Mexico together with the United States, was their ultimate goal. Yes. They've had to back off because of the numbers that you just showed in that poll, because the reality is Americans understand what's happening. Whatever the race, whatever the sex, whatever the socioeconomic dicing you want to do with the numbers, Americans know when they're being lied to, and they can feel the reality. And the reality is that we don't have borders because we, in the last month, just returned to the highest levels of illegal immigration across our southern border.
What's so interesting when you look at these numbers is that Democrats will tell you, and the media tells you, and a lot of Republicans tell you, that people don't like immigration because they're racist, because they're bigots.
Right.
When you look at the numbers, less than 20% of African Americans say immigration has made their communities better. They're not for it. Hispanic Americans, same thing. So it's not really about bigotry, actually, because this cuts across races.
Oh, absolutely. And, of course, the entire left wing and establishment argument collapses if people look at the reality. The reality is that all of those ethnocentric, interest groups and activist groups are basically spewing propaganda, and it's all been picked up by the national left-wing media, supported by the establishment and corporate America, to obviously the detriment of working men and women, particularly at the lowest paying levels, lowest skilled levels, lowest education levels in this country. Because the people crossing that border, as the president has made clear throughout, are not coming across on the basis of merit. They're coming across on the basis of Mexican government policy, which insists that they be transferred to the United States,
exactly.
The poor, the least advantaged amongst their society.
That is, you've been saying this for 20 years, and I remember vividly when we worked at another network, and you said things like that, and people laughed at you, and it turned out you were right. You were completely right. I mean, it must frustrate you.
Well, they still laugh a little bit, I hope, because we should have a sense of humor about the reality that is American politics. We just elected a president in 2016 who was talking about each of these issues, and the idiot establishment are telling the rhinos in the Republican Party they should run on tax cuts instead of on trade, on jobs, on markets that are improving, and the issue of illegal immigration.
That's right.
And border
exactly
security.
Right. Lou Dobbs, thank you for that. It's great to see you.
Great to be with you. Thanks.
California was once a paradise, the greatest of the 50 states, and now sadly it's fallen into ruin. After yesterday's primaries, is there any hope for it? Gubernatorial candidate John Cox of California joins us after the break. Well, over time, California has been a leading indicator of what the rest of the country becomes. Let's hope that's no longer true. California now has rampant poverty, failing schools, drug needles and human waste piling up on its sidewalks, bankrupt municipal governments, a vanishing middle class. At this point, California doesn't even have a shared language. Almost half the state doesn't speak English at home. Can California be saved, or is it too late? John Cox doesn't think it's too late. He's a Republican running for governor of California. He got his nomination last night. He'll be facing Gavin Newsom in November, and he joins us tonight. Mr. Cox, thank you for coming on.
Well, thank you, Tucker. Thanks for having me. You grew up in California. You lived the California dream, and now the California dream is to figure out ways to get to Texas. We got to change that. Gavin Newsom would run this state even further into the ground.
So what would you, and it's sad even to report on it, but it matters. It's the biggest state and it's a bellwether state. There are so many problems with California. We could go on for the rest of the week on this, but if you were to narrow it down to one thing you could change about the state to keep the middle class from fleeing, to keep the state from going bankrupt, what would it be?
Well, I have to say it was the tax burden primarily. The gas tax has been really a problem here. A state senator, Josh Newman, was just recalled yesterday by 60%. They spent $8 million of special interest money to try to keep this guy in office, and the voters turned it out. And that's a good sign, Tucker, that the voters here are getting it. You know, this election is going to provide a stark contrast. Gavin Newsom talked about it. He wants to have a cradle-to-college nanny state government, as if this government isn't big enough or taxing us enough. He wants to expand that. He wants to double the income tax. He wants to increase property taxes, and he wants to make sure that we don't repeal this gas tax. I say the people of this state have been taxed enough. They're going to rebel, and we're going to lead that revolt here.
But, I mean, California owes more to its retired workers than it could ever conceivably repay. I mean, I just don't think it could ever repay that money. It's too much. And now they're proposing to give free Medicaid to illegal immigrants. So how would the state ever afford that, or any of this? Like, what is the plan going forward to keep that place solvent?
Well, I'd like to think that we could grow our way out of it, but I don't even think that's available to us. We're going to have some really stark, clear conversations with a lot of these employee unions, and as usual, it's the employees who are going to take the pipe on this. They're the ones that are going to get hurt. And I got to tell you, Tucker, they haven't even begun to put any money away for retiree health care. And there's all kinds of state workers that are retiring at 53, 54 years old. And they've been promised health care until they qualify for Medicare, And as we know, Medicare is going broke at the federal level. So, you know, the big problem, obviously, is that California can't print money, and its credit rating is hanging by a thread. I'm a CPA. That was my first degree, and I tell you what, I've got to level with the people of this state about the problems with this unfunded debt.
I can't imagine what it must be like to be a certified public accountant in California, to be a math guy living in a state that doesn't acknowledge the reality of math. It must drive you crazy. John Cox, thank you. Good luck. Godspeed.
I appreciate the opportunity.
Thanks. Well, for the past couple of nights, we've showed you the shoddy hiring practices of the FAA. Not just shoddy, actually, but shocking. Air traffic controllers, demonstrably unqualified for the job, sought out on purpose by government, and it's still happening. Can Congress fix it? We'll talk to one member next. Prison sentences aren't just a way to protect the public, though they're definitely that. They're also a way that society expresses what it cares about. They show our values, what we abhor and what we approve of. Well, with that in mind, Tommy Robinson in the UK is spending 13 months in jail. His crime, trying to cover the trial of a sex grooming ring. In Great Britain, trying to highlight rape and assault committed by migrants is now considered a sinister crime. You know what's not quite as bad as that, it turns out, in the UK? Child pornography. Tony Aslett, he was a tour guide at Buckingham Palace, was just caught with 15,000 pornographic images of children. That's his picture on the screen right there. Some of the victims in the images were as young as 18 months old. We could go on, but we won't because it's disgusting. He's going to prison for 9 months. So it's a good thing he merely victimized children and didn't dare question diversity, then he'd be in real trouble. Well, we've told you on this show a couple of times about declining standards at the FAA, part of the wider war on standards that is gripping the whole country and against which we will be fighting starting this week. In the name of diversity, the FAA has added an irrelevant biographical section to its hiring process for air traffic controllers. Congress could intervene and require that hiring be dictated solely by actual qualifications for air traffic control. We hope that happens. So does Congressman Frank Lobiondo. He represents New Jersey, chairs the House Subcommittee on Aviation, and he joins us now. Congressman, thanks a lot for coming on. Mr. Chairman.
Thanks for having me on.
So we got, which you already know, the data that show that the FAA intentionally seeks out unqualified air traffic controllers, and that's horrifying. What we haven't been able to figure out is who's responsible for this.
So first, thank you for raising this again. It was your network who first raised it a couple years ago and gave us an ability to get some traction, but unfortunately it got left in the dust.
Yeah, we're not going to stop because it's too important.
So we were blindsided. Under the Obama administration and the FAA administrator at the time, Michael Wirtza, normally they come to Congress and say, hey, we're going to change the procedures. In this particular case, air traffic control qualifies. How do we do it? What are we going to do? Nothing. Just did it. Blindsided us. When we started asking questions, why did you do it? Did you check this biographical out to make sure it was going to work? Nothing. Silence. So we've been fighting this now for a couple of years without getting any answers, any explanation as to why. With a total blindside, we had the Department of Transportation Inspector General involved. We have the Government Accounting Office involved. And you had a very able guest on, Michael Pearson, who's done a great job. But because of the lawsuit, both of those agencies sort of shut down. So what was the most egregious part of this, we've already attempted and addressed, and that is that the CTI students, and that's how this first came to me.
Right. CTI students are kids who've gone to school directly, intentionally become air traffic controllers.
They have the aptitude, and they paid tens of thousands of dollars to do this. It's amazing, and they had the rug pulled out from under them, totally qualified, ready to go into the training program, and told, sorry.
But so what I don't understand is there anybody who will come out and say, yes, the FAA should seek out people who are unemployed for 3 years and bad at science to become air traffic controllers? Will anybody actually defend that?
No, I doubt it.
So why shouldn't Congress pass, in its authorization for funding for the FAA, a rule that says you cannot use irrelevant criteria for hiring air traffic controllers? It's too important. You're not allowed to do that. Can we do that?
Well, if I were writing the bill and we're able to do it without the consent of the Senate and just do it through our committee, we would do it.
Who are the members of Congress who would get in the way of that? Who would say,
Well,
you know what, we need to hire more unemployed people who are bad at science?
Well, they won't put it that way. They won't put it that way. But you know the way it works. The House passes a bill, the Senate passes a bill, it has to go to conference, and then, you know, the senators get involved and the thing gets mucked up. But what is important to know from what you're reporting...
Do you think that they understand that lives are at stake? These are air traffic controllers.
I don't think they pay enough attention to it. But what we were able to correct, which I think is important to point out, is that the CTI students, and maybe most egregiously military, former military, especially military air traffic controllers, are now into the mix again.
No, it's good, but if there's a single person who's unqualified and hired for this job, again, this is not to become a gym teacher.
No, it's not.
These are air traffic controllers.
It is, but this is what's important to also know. If one of these people who really maybe doesn't belong there gets through the initial process, they have to go through the academy, and they're washed out because the academy will put up with no nonsense.
I don't believe that for a second.
Well,
because the directive is, look, there are things that are more important than ability. And everybody in the bureaucracy knows you're graded on irrelevant criteria, like your commitment to diversity. And so, like, you're going to have bad people get through. Of course.
It's wrong.
It's totally wrong.
It's totally wrong.
Congressman, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
It's just so nuts. It's hard to believe it's real.
Please keep on it.
Oh, we're going to keep on it.
Okay.
Democrats have finally started to attack Bill Clinton, but why'd they wait until he was irrelevant? Maybe because all they care about is power. Details on that next. Well, it was more than 20 years ago that Bill Clinton was first exposed as a sexual predator, and for decades the left defended him from attack. Only now, with his wife defeated and his family safely neutralized as a political force, the left is going after him. During an appearance on The Late Show, Clinton was pressed by Stephen Colbert in a way he likely should have been years ago but never was. Here's part of it.
I apologize to my family, to Monica Lewinsky and her family, to the American people. I meant it then, I meant it now. I've had to live with the consequences every day since.
It seemed tone deaf to me because you seemed offended to be asked about this thing when, in all due respect, sir, your behavior was the most famous example of a powerful man sexually misbehaving in the workplace of my lifetime.
Dave Rubin hosts the Rubin Report, and he joins us tonight. Dave, great to see you.
Great
in
to see
town
you,
for
brother.
a rare appearance. So I don't know if I'm going soft or something. I've never liked Bill Clinton. I obviously wouldn't vote for him. Why do I suddenly feel sorry for him? Because he's this sort of old guy who's been cast aside by a party because he's no longer useful. That's my instinct. I don't know.
Wow, that's weird. If you just suddenly went soft on Bill Clinton, I'm not exactly sure what I'm doing here on this Tucker Carlson show.
He's disposable, and so they're attacking him now.
Well, look, the left eats their own. I mean, this is exactly what I've been talking about on my show for the last couple of years. This might be a case where the left is supposed to eat their own, but they eat their own even when they're not supposed to eat their own. But it's interesting that he's still trying to frame himself as the victim here. I mean, he's not the victim. Right. He's not the victim when it comes to Monica Lewinsky, and he's certainly not the victim when it comes to all those other women, regardless of what the actual truth is, if we're supposed to believe the initial accusation. And then, of course, you have to find evidence for those things. But this is just this is the nature of what's happening in general with the internet right now, that the conversation just doesn't stop. And, you know, when this was happening with Bill Clinton back in the early 90s, this was only happening on the media. You know, mainstream media was only having these conversations. Now it can keep bubbling up online, and they can't control it anymore. So then it bubbles up, and then next thing he knows, he's having to do this with Colbert, and he's not happy about it.
It would be a safe space.
Yeah.
So you're on the road with Jordan Peterson.
I am.
Which, unfortunately, because of my job, I can't see it, but I really wish I could because it sounds amazing. You just went to UNH to talk about free speech, and here's part of the reception.
Oh my, we're playing this? All right.
Watch this.
You will hopefully treat people as individuals and be willing to have friends of all colors and ethnicities and all of that stuff.
We are not the problem. We are not the problem. We are not the problem.
You almost got it except for the word not. Can we try that one? Yeah. You know what? I'll give you a cookie if you can say something else. How about that? I got a whole tray of cookies back there.
Hate speech does incite violence. Hate speech does incite violence.
Ladies, I'll gladly take a question from you. Have we established that already? Groupthink, man. It's alluring.
It was almost almost worth it just to hear your responses, which were superb, by the way.
Thank you. They make it easy.
But what was the complaint exactly?
Well, first off, I want to clarify that when you see all those empty seats behind me, that is because it was supposed to be 300 people at the event on campus at University of New Hampshire, but then because of threats, they couldn't secure campus. That's what we were told. So they moved it to a 7,500 seat hockey rink. So then I'm standing there in front of 300 people. But basically, look, 250 of those kids came there to listen, and it was with Turning Point USA, which is a conservative college organization. I go up there, I talk about being gay married, and I talk about being pro-choice and against the death penalty, and a whole bunch of stuff that conservatives shouldn't like, right, that we could debate all day long.
Yes.
And they're happy to have me there. It's the 50 others that come with noisemakers to scream at you and berate you and give endless sort of useless slogans. And then when I look at them, I made a point. I said, I'm looking you right in the eye right now. I said, do you have a question? Is there anything that I've said that offends you? Is there anything that you'd like to share with me? And then they either go silent or start screaming. But the most interesting part of this, and I didn't know this till about a week ago, one of the protesters there was a trans woman in the back who was yelling and telling me to go F myself and a bunch of other stuff. It turns out she's a gender studies professor at the university. So you literally have university professors from gender studies, if we want to consider that a real discipline or not. We literally have them showing up to silence speakers on college campuses, and that's actually okay these days. That's how crazy
Did you ever get to the I mean, they're obviously unhappy people, but did you get to the core complaint? Like, what do they want you to do?
There's nothing you want. They want you to bow forever. That's it. They want you to bow. They're not there to listen. They're not there. They want you to bow and listen to them. They're not there to have the exchange of free speech. I mean, I made it so clear. If your audience is welcome to watch the whole video, it's about 2 hours. It's on my YouTube channel. And it's like, we put that up. I didn't even want to put it up. We put it up only because I saw people selectively editing it and making it seem like I was shutting them down. And come on.
They want you to bow.
They want you to bow. Don't bow.
On the road with Jordan Peterson. Thank you, Dave.
Thanks, my friend.
RFK murdered 50 years ago today. His son says the government is hiding the truth about the assassination of his uncle. We talked to him after the break. Well, believe it or not, the full release of all files related to the JFK assassination has been delayed yet again, this time until 2021. The president delayed the release in the name of national security, but it raises the question, what possible national security interest could be served at this point in protecting information about an assassination that occurred 55 years ago? Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is the author of American Values. He is, of course, the nephew of the slain president. He joins us tonight. It's such an odd... I've never done a segment on the assassination before, but I'm so struck by how weird this story is. The president has said point-blank a couple of times, I'm going to release all these files. He was convinced for some reason not to release them. What do you imagine that reason really was?
Well, I share your mystification. When the stuff that's dribbling out, it is information that tends to connect the CIA to the assassination in one way or the other. I mean, the last one that they let out, what was it, in November, they let a batch out, and that showed that Charles Cabell, who was the mayor of Dallas at the time my uncle was assassinated, was actually a CIA operative and had been a CIA operative since 1956. And then there was also some information about the automobile that showed that the window had been replaced. Again, information that 50 years later, people should know about, people should have access to that kind of information, and it's bizarre that they still continue to sit on it.
Do you believe that the CIA or another government agency was in any way involved in the assassination of your uncle?
Well, I don't know. I don't think that possibility has been eliminated. A lot of people don't understand that when John Kennedy was killed, my father really was Attorney General. And so one of the defenses of the Warren Commission was, well, Bobby Kennedy was the best investigator of that era. He was like Mueller of that era. You know, he had been for 10 years, he'd been investigating the unions and the Teamsters and, and the mob. And so why wouldn't he investigate it? But the truth is, the day that his brother was killed, he lost all of the investigative capacity at the Department of Justice. He had 30,000 FBI agents who worked for him, but he never talked to J. Edgar Hoover again, not a single time after my Uncle Jack was killed. Oh, he really had no, because Hoover at that time began reporting directly to Johnson. And my father, who was ostensibly Hoover's boss, really lost control of the FBI and the investigative capacity of the Department of Justice, and he resigned soon afterward.
I just find the whole thing remarkable that the Attorney General of the United States, later a U.S. Senator, a person in a position to have a lot of information, would suspect his own CIA, and now the documents are still being withheld by that same agency. I think it's really fascinating. The book is American Values, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. It is out, and we urge you to check it out. Bobby Kennedy, thanks very much for that. I appreciate it. We spoke at even greater length with RFK Jr. The full interview goes up on our Facebook page soon. You can search for the Tucker Carlson Tonight page and find it there. And that, sadly, is it for us tonight. Tune in every night at 8 p.m. to the show that's the sworn enemy of lying, pomposity, smugness, and groupthink. Good night from Washington.